to another Through the Bible. Today we're doing the book of Daniel. Very interesting book. This is one of the last books for a while that you have Sunday school stories from. Once we get into all the minor prophets, you're like, who's that guy? But that's what's going to be fun about going through them all. But Daniel is kind of the last of the major prophets. We call them major. Why?
Because they're not minor.
Just because their books are bigger. I was like, why are some prophets like cooler than the others? Because they're major prophets and the other ones are minor. It just refers to these are big books of prophecy. Daniel's actually not that big. It's not like Isaiah and Jeremiah, which are like 50 chapters. Isaiah 66. But Daniel has, I think, 12. Is that right? 12 chapters. But there's a lot of narrative also in Daniel. Who wrote the book of Daniel?
Daniel.
Daniel, yay! It's another book that's not.
The book of Daniel.
We don't not Daniel Bargain. No, Daniel Azariah. No. What's his name? Daniel's his Hebrew name, and then Azariah, I think.
No.
Oh, I read a book about this.
What is it?
I forget.
Belshazzar.
Yeah, I think
Sorry, Belshazzar.
Is it Belshazzar?
His friends, Azariah is Abednego. That's Abednego's name. Mishael, Hananiah, also known as Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego. That's in verse 7 if you want to see their names. Daniel was called Belshazzar. What's funny about their names, this is a side note, we actually know Daniel by his Hebrew name, not his Babylonian name. But we know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego more common by their Babylonian names. But you see there, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they have Hebrew names too. Anyway, I don't know why that is, but that's how they're known. There's quite a few stories in Daniel that, again, are like Sunday school stories. What are they that you guys know of?
Daniel in the Lion's Den.
Daniel in the Lion's Den. What else?
The bunny's in the fire.
The bunny in the fire is not in the Bible. That's a Veggie Tales.
The bunny.
Yes, based on what? What is that story based on in the Bible?
Fiery furnace.
The fiery furnace. Which, interestingly enough, have you guys ever noticed in the story of the fiery furnace, where's Daniel?
Not there.
Not there.
Is he in the Lion's Den?
No, that's much later. He's not in the lion's den. He's
being
not
born?
mentioned in that part of the story, but it's in his book, and it's about his friend. So did he bow down to the statue?
Yes.
Daniel.
Or was he like on a trip or missing? There's different theories on
Wasn't
that.
Daniel the
We don't
favorite
think
out
that
of all of them?
it would have been out of character for Daniel to bow down to the statue, but everyone else it seems
Wasn't
like did.
Daniel the favorite out of all of them?
What were you gonna say, Betsy?
Oh, well, that was what I was going to say. He could have been on track. But also,
Yeah.
I didn't think if there's the right
True.
No, it was.
Writing on the Wall is a popular Daniel story. Yes.
Oh,
Um, Libby.
And for my people, it has Daniel, then it always has Belshazzar as two different people.
They're the same person. That's his Hebrew name, Daniel, and his Babylonian name, Belshazzar.
Maybe he just wasn't mentioned because he wasn't put in the fiery furnace. Because
Why is it?
He's
the king
favorite.
liked him.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
He
say.
stayed up, but the king
Yeah.
liked him, so he didn't want to put him.
I think he was probably with the
He
king
was
when
a
it had to
favorite.
happen, and so he had to bow down because
So
he
he
was
was on
probably
stage?
so like.
Is
Yeah.
this on stage?
He was
a favorite.
watching them all bow down.
I don't know. It's a mystery. We don't know. Addie, what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say that.
Okay. So, anyway, the book of Daniel. This is kind of half a book as far as literary style. Narrative, it kind of tells the story of Daniel and his friends' lives of being captured out of Jerusalem and taken to Babylon. And then the second half is prophecy. So that's why it's placed here. Once again, we're not in the chronological part of the Bible. The Bible isn't chronological the way it's arranged. It's more categorical or genre based. So we're in the section of prophecy. So Daniel's story could have been placed, with like before Esther, really, because that's where it took place. But no, it's placed here with prophecy because half of it is prophecy. So kind of interesting why. Also, that's why Jeremiah, Ezra was all placed here because we're in the genre section of prophetic books. So we've got Daniel, author, narrative is the genre, as well as apocalyptic prophecy. So this is a different type of prophecy. It's pretty popular in the Bible. What is apocalyptic? Did we talk about this yet? It's the end. So it's talking about like when things will be destroyed, when things will come to the end, talking about the future, near and far. There's different opinions on how much of this prophecy has been fulfilled. Some people point to most of it being fulfilled. Some people point to it more like in time of Revelation. Both could be true. That's kind of what the Bible Project talks about, which is interesting. Their audience. Who was he writing to? Who do you think?
Other captives of
Exiles.
Babylon.
Oh, it's up there. Good job.
You
Yeah,
should
he was
get
writing
some a little
to
less
the other
exact
captives
than
in
you wrote.
Babylon because there was a remnant of Jewish people and he wanted to know and instruct. Like this is kind of instructive on how to live in Babylon as a Jewish person, how to remain faithful to God even though you didn't have the temple, even though you didn't have priests, right? Like you are in a foreign nation, in an enemy nation essentially. How do you be faithful to God? How do you navigate some of these challenges when your authorities are telling you to do one thing, but you know that is telling you to disobey God?
Kill them.
Over and over. Henry, is that
Killing
we're
people
going to
means
learn.
obeying God.
What's one of the other stories? What's one of the first stories that the decisions Daniel is faced with?
I know, pick me.
Oh,
Jessica.
The food. The food
Yes.
restrictions
Oh.
and Jewish
Yeah, we should go on the Daniel diet.
No, bro. Diet.
So, yes, Daniel is, as a young man, he and his 3 friends are pulled out of Jerusalem. So, we talked about the different invasions, right? How the different sieges and the different waves of people, there's like 3 waves of people that were carried over to Babylon. Daniel was in that first wave. They were selecting some like
Smart people.
smart and beautiful people to essentially build up a super race of Babylonians.
just like the Germans.
It is very similar to Nazi Germany, only it was kind of different. In Nazi, it was like only these specific people are super race. Babylon was literally taking like the rich and the smart and beautiful people from all kinds of societies, trying to like funnel it down into a super race, or trying to enhance their gene pool essentially of like
And they're smart by taking smart people
smart
out of
and
other
beautiful
countries.
people. Yes. So they were taking, as they would invade a country, they would take the smart and beautiful people and bring them back to Babylon and try to make them Babylonians, incorporate them into society. So right away, Daniel and his friends are selected. The 4 the young men chosen, and they're actually given a special job. They must have passed some intelligence test or something. Something qualified them to be part of the wise men, kind of the philosophers, the wise men of Babylon, and they're put in this group. And they're told to eat the king's food. This is an honor. They would have had good lives over here. They're not being treated as like lowly slaves. They're being given good food. The king assigned daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens. The best kitchens, right? The king gets the best food with the best chefs. Gordon Ramsay's back there cooking up stuff. And they get the good food, right? So what do you think? Daniel could have been like, wow, the Lord has really blessed us. Even though we're over here and we're captives, God is taking care of us. He's blessing us faithfully. But instead, he realizes something. Olivia.
What? I think it was smart to take the smart people out because then there's nobody to make a rebellion.
Could be, yeah. That's could be part of the
Too many
strategy.
people may do a rebellion.
Lots of weird people do rebellion.
But still, like to organize an actual like.
They take away the good leader. They took away
That's
the
a
leadership.
step for a rebellion.
You know when you do that, like in a team building game, like when they're trying to accomplish something, and then they're like, it's ever done? Like that person can't talk anymore. We did this on the retreat. They select the leaders and they silence them, right? It's kind of could be coming down.
that game.
But anyway, Daniel is faced.
Youth group getting wet.
Yeah,
No,
Daniel,
that's much traumatic for us.
It's a good bunch.
Daniel and his friends are faced with a problem because what is part of the king's food?
Meat.
Meats,
that are
pigs,
not-
Meats?
Pig.
Yeah, like pork and foods that would be unclean to eat as a Jewish person. We haven't talked about that much about kosher laws, but they weren't allowed to eat all the different animals, right?
Why?
Animals with cloven hooves that don't chew the
Because
Because
cuds.
God told them.
So
Why
they
did God tell them
I
that?
actually
God-
want protection of them for their health.
there's
It
different
was-
ideas on
Think
why.
about how
It was
all
to
that.
separate them.
Think about when
You know,
all
keep
these
them
animals got
different.
moved to North America and how much diseases they brought.
Yeah.
So a couple things.
I learned
Well, it's
about
'cause
that.
they didn't have the internet.
So I think the primary reason God did was to distinguish them from the rest of the people. Like in this situation, if this was the only reason that God did that, I don't know how God works. But like I could see that being this one rule about what they could eat and what they couldn't eat gave Daniel a completely different trajectory. Instead of being just absorbed into the Babylonian culture, he distinguished himself in this story. And it made the Jews stay Jews in Babylon. They weren't just Babylonians. They were different than everybody else. It also, we see this happen when they were in Egypt, when they were also in captivity in a foreign land. Joseph told his brothers to say, hey, we're shepherds, right? And Egyptians were like, ooh, shepherds are gross. We'll give them their own town. It kept them from being absorbed into the Egyptian population, which would have naturally happened. It separated them. So if there's no other reason than separation, I could go with that. But there's also other ideas about the kosher eating that was for health reasons. I don't know, Betsy, were you going to comment on that?
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of the ones they're allowed to eat would chew their food multiple times with their different stomachs.
Yeah, like a cow has 4 stomachs, right? And it only eats grass and cleaner foods. But pigs eat garbage, basically, and their food, their meat can be toxic.
And a lot of animals they weren't allowed to eat were ones who eat, like you say, rotten food, or they eat like basically nasty stuff that is bad for you. Like
Yeah.
dead
Kosher
animals.
hot dogs are superior.
So, for example, like you don't eat medium rare pork, right? You have to cook that well. Chicken has to be cooked all the way through. Chicken is kosher though. But anyway, like beef, you can eat almost raw. If it's not been contaminated from the outside, like the inside of the meat, there's usually no toxins in it, right? You can.
Raw is called blue rare.
Blue rare.
Yeah.
People eat it that way. But like a medium rare, or medium, it's still red in the middle, right? Anyway, they were only allowed to eat certain meats. Health reasons, purity reasons, separation reasons. I don't really know, but definitely kept them separate. So that's what Daniel did. It's a really good example of how to live in a foreign country under evil leadership, but also obey God, right? And so sometimes we find ourselves in that situation. We are not under a Christian nation. We don't have all Christian leaders. And so sometimes the laws of our country may come against the laws of God. So whose authority do we obey in those situations? God is the higher authority. We obey his authority.
But if he
So-
tells you to murder, it's not God.
Correct. You have to use God's voice against the Bible.
Anyway,
What?
so where and when?
God telling people to kill the bites?
We are in 60. Hey guys, we gotta keep going. Addie, we gotta keep going. 605 to 535 BC. So 605 would have been when that invasion happened, that they got captured and brought over. And 535 is near the end when he probably wrote it all. Maybe it was the narrative part was under notes, but he has these visions throughout. Daniel survived like at least 4 different kings and different nations even, because Babylon gets conquered. Babylon gets conquered by the Persians. And he still is considered a wise man and highly respected by the king and the king's family all the way through these different kings. Like the story of Daniel in the lion's den, he was really old. That's with King Darius. And the king earlier, like with the writing on the wall, was a different king than Nebuchadnezzar. So you thought he was old then, he's even older later. But he's still revered and has a position of authority and power.
I'm looking at the one where this is when the book was writing stuff down, or is this Daniel's life? I'm just trying to decide when the 605 to 535.
605 to 535 is Daniel's lifeline, I think.
Or is it when the book covers history for?
It was written down around 535. But the events take place from 605. Remember, we're counting down BC.
So is that 70 years? Or 40 years? I can't remember. I don't know which way to do my math because it's a...
That's 40 years of...
My
wait,
Bible
no.
says
No,
exactly.
That's
70.
70 years of time. Yeah.
Okay.
My Bible also says this.
Yep.
Okay.
So he lived a long life and had a lot of really amazing experiences, and God put him in positions of authority and power. Not, he wasn't ever the king, but influence and
Like Joseph.
it's kind of like a Joseph. I mean, he wasn't second in command ever like that, but there's a lot of parallels to Joseph. He interprets a king's dream. That's how he becomes in a position of relationship with the king. He interprets a dream, which is a really interesting dream. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels to Joseph, but there's a lot of parallels to the Jews being in captivity or being in, we'll call it exile. They weren't all slaves, right? It's different than it was in Egypt, but exile in Babylon as to when they were in Egypt. Main characters, we got Daniel, we got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, also known by Azariah, Mishael, and Hananiah.
What is the detailed versions of their names?
Rakshak and Benny, if you watch the VeggieTales. Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the big bad king who, invaded Judah and Jerusalem and took them over. Belshazzar is the king with the writing on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And so here's a really, oh man, I got so much to talk about with Daniel. We're going to run out of time.
2 days.
Really interesting. This is, I enjoy some archaeology, like finding out about stuff when they dig stuff out of the ground and it like proves history and stuff. Belshazzar was this king that was in the Bible and nowhere else in recorded history. Okay? He was like this little like side note in the Bible, like he just in this one story, right? And literally people argued that the Bible was false because this king never existed. The Bible got it wrong. The Bible is made up, okay? But literally after years, see, here's, as time goes on, we actually dig up more stuff, right? So it's not like because we're closer to the past, we actually learn more about the past as time goes on because we dig up more holes, I guess. But they actually found some writing about Belshazzar. Belshazzar was the son of the king, and the king was fighting against the Persians, and so he put his son in charge of the city for one day. For a weekend, basically.
And this is when
What does Belshazzar do?
throw a party.
He throws a huge party. He's pulling out all the gold goblets that they stole from the temple in Israel, and then this hand is writing on the wall. Anyway, that night he gets killed because the Persians invade. Instead of defending the city, like his dad said to, he's like, put him in charge for a weekend and defend the city while he's out. So he's like second in command, and literally Belshazzar does the thing that the Pharaoh did to Joseph, but he says, I will make you third in command. Why would he make him third in command?
Because he was second.
Because he was second. So anyway, all this to say, the Bible had this king that was only basically king for a week or weekend, and archaeology said, oh, the Bible's wrong on this, and then we discovered that actually he did exist and more of the circumstances about it. Very interesting. Darius and Cyrus are kings of Persia, and so they come in, a whole other nation, and they conquer Babylon, and another nation comes out. What is the purpose of this book? Is it just fun stories for Sunday school?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Just so they could make a VeggieTales. No!
And your wife. I think we all
We
said
know
it.
that.
We all said
We
it.
know it's wrong, so therefore
I know.
we're just trying.
We're just being messing with you, babe.
Oh, that's gonna give my husband.
So the purpose of this book is not just fun Sunday stories for Sunday school. It's to give a historical account of the faithful Jews who lived in capacity. First of all, just it tells the story of them. But really, like as far as spiritual purpose, it shows how God is in control of heaven and earth, dictating the forces of nature, the destiny of nations, and the care of his people.
I'm not writing that one. It's too long.
It's a big one. And then also, it teaches us how to honor God under evil rulers. Can you write at least to show that God is in control?
Okay.
Because that's really important. Don't not write it just because it's
Don't
long.
not. Did you just say that?
Yeah. Don't not write it because it's long. That is a correct statement.
I will readjust
I use my
board
double
for you.
negatives properly.
My board will become readjusted. Look at
Because basically, you see Daniel in all these stories under all these different kings, and he points all these different kings to God, and it's really amazing. It shows that God is in control. This is a hard thing to realize, but when you're in a country with evil rulers and rulers that don't fear God, who put those rulers there still? God did. God is still in control, even when there's evil rulers in charge, right? God is in authority over the authorities. And that can be a hard thing to rectify when evil men are doing evil things in our world. But it is so important to remember that God is still in control. And God's plans are still playing out. You were going to say something, Henry?
had something to say earlier, but you just kept going on. So
Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, the Jews are still struggling now. Like 50% of hate crimes are against Jews.
Wow.
There's ads now on YouTube.
Interesting. But, even through God uses evil nations like we talked about with through Jeremiah, right? Like God is still going to judge the evil nations, even though he used them to punish his nation. And so kind of like God, these other nations were worse than what the Jews were doing, but he used these other nations to punish. But still, he's also going to punish them. God is a just God. And he's in control, and his plans are playing out, even though it seems crazy and awful and evil things are happening. Let's do a quick outline here, just so you know the flow of the book, some of the major stories. Kind of two halves, like I mentioned. It's basically the narrative half, and then the prophecy half. So Daniel's life is chapters 1 through 6. This is his narrative story of his life. Here's some of the main events. Chapter 1, he's recruited to serve in Babylon. Chapter 2 has the king's dream. This is the Nebuchadnezzar dream with the big statue that falls over.
Oh, yeah.
You guys know that one? Literally, Daniel and his friends get word that they're going to be killed. They're not even involved in this conversation. They just get word they're going to be killed. The reason why is the wise men higher up than them. They're just within this group of wise men. They weren't even at the meeting, but they get word that they couldn't interpret the king's dream, and so they're gonna get killed. So Daniel's like, first it's amazing because he's like, we got to pray about this, and then God gives him the interpretation of the dream. And the amazing, crazy thing about this dream,
I know this, right?
it is so amazing. It is a prophetic dream, but it has. I'm forgetting them all now. Where is it? We need to look it up.
What each thing represents, the Medes
Yes.
and the Persians and all that.
So yeah, but what
Is this the time where he tells them what the dream means, but he's never even been told the dream?
no.
Oh, that's one of it. Is that Joseph then?
Yeah, that's Joseph.
I love that. Like, I don't even need to know the dream. I'm just going to tell you. God revealed it to me.
All right.
Oh, I missed one. The lion's den. I'm out of room, guys.
Me
There's a
too.
Brian's
I only
purpose
have
is
4
way
more
too
lives
long.
for my
In your vision,
It's a problem.
there's a huge statue. It has a head of gold, chest of arms silver, bellies and thigh bronze, legs were iron, feet iron and clay. And then a rock comes down from the mountain, hits the statue, and knocks it over. Yeah, there it is. So, literally, this is a foretelling of the next, 600-700 years plus of events, of nations, right? So, head of gold, who is that? What nation is that?
Like,
The current nation in power.
Babylon.
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 The next would be who comes in and takes them?
Persia.
The Persians. The Medes and the Persians come in. The next one, what do you guys know about history?
Syria?
Medes.
Who comes and conquers the Persians?
Romans?
No, there's a nation in between. The movie 300? No,
Huh?
none of you should have seen that. It's very
The
violent.
Israelites?
No, who conquers the Persians?
Medes. I'm guessing.
No,
The Greek?
the Greeks.
Good
Oh,
job.
The Greeks conquer them. They're the bronze. And then the iron and clay, who are they? Who conquers the Greeks?
Me.
Rome.
Rome, the Romans, right? Now, who conquers the Romans?
The Golden Horde?
The Greekans.
This big stone that rolls in. There's not.
Jesus.
No one.
Wait, actually?
Yes!
You gave a Sunday school answer.
It is the Sunday school answer. So the rock is unlike all the others, right? It's
The
not just
rock.
another nation. It is a big stone that rolls in and knocks over the tower. Okay, and then it becomes what? What does the rock become?
A mountain.
A mountain. Okay, so this is crazy, but that's exactly what happens, right? The Babylonians get overthrown by the Persians.
This
The
is all
Persians
for-
get
for
overthrown by the
chapter
Greeks. Yeah. The Greeks get overthrown by the Romans, and the Romans get first it divides, right? The iron and clay, it becomes diluted, and then it becomes, Jesus takes it over. The Roman Catholic Church. It gets knocked over.
If we
Right?
can't
Like
beat
literally
them, join
Jesus
them.
conquers Rome. It takes over, and then we can talk about
The
Catholicism.
Romans-
But literally
Can't beat 'em.
Jesus takes over the world at that point. His kingdom gets established. It's super interesting, but it's like the playing out of all the major nations for the next 700, maybe 1,000 years. Yes, Luke.
Random question: does anybody actually like physically conquer Rome? I guess. How it
Not really.
They just die out.
No one else sets up an empire like Rome does after Rome, right?
Well,
it
no,
just
the
gets.
Mongolians. Mongolians
Yeah.
have the
Mongol
largest
memes.
empire.
Yeah.
What?
The Mongolians.
But they don't
Yeah.
conquer this area of the world.
No, they're
Yeah, yeah.
Well, they conquer
After
some of
Rome,
it.
it kind of just
Kinda
goes into
area.
Asia, and that area
Yeah,
is
it's
in power,
there's no nation
essentially.
like there's just one after the other in this area of the world, and then not so much.
Mhm.
Okay,
Oh,
chapter
Germany.
3 is the story of the fiery furnace. Chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar gets super prideful and goes into beast mode and becomes like a wild animal, and his hair and his fingernails grow and he eats grass, and because he
Wait, so not like good beast mode.
No, bad
Weird.
beast mode.
Not good beast.
and then Nebuchadnezzar actually writes a section of the Bible. This is crazy. Nebuchadnezzar. In chapter 4. After this time is past, so he comes to his senses when he's a beast. I, Nebuchadnezzar, looked up to heaven, my sanity restored, and I praised and worshipped the Most High and honored the one who lives forever. And then he writes this little thing about God. His rule is everlasting. His kingdom is eternal. And so he honors God and praises God with his own words in chapter 4.
Does he realize that after that?
Yes, after God humbles him, after he looks at look everything I've
Wait,
done.
like, does he
This is totally like the rulers, right? Like, no, God's really in charge, and when the rulers think they're in charge, God humbles them, and he's taken down.
Does he still believe that God's in control after that happens? Or does
Yeah,
he...
it's after. It all happens after. His turning to God happens after God humbles him and turns him into a beast. And then he comes out of it and honors God. Yes?
So could you say that Nebuchadnezzar is the only non-Jewish writer in the Bible?
I don't think he's the
Job.
only non-Jewish.
Job.
I mean,
Well, we don't know.
No,
who
because
wrote it.
Paul.
Oh,
No.
Paul is
Paul
Jewish.
is Jewish.
No, oh, the other guy. No,
I know
the
Luke
other
was
guy.
part, right? I don't know.
Maybe. Maybe there's other people who wrote sections like Nebuchadnezzar. Side note, what language is Daniel written in?
Hebrew.
Greek.
No,
Aramaic.
only part of it, only the intro.
Is it Greek?
It's written in Aramaic.
Aramaic.
So it's one of the few parts of the Bible, most of the Bible, Old Testament, most of it's written in Hebrew, most of the New Testament's written in Greek.
Okay.
But parts of, most of Daniel's written in Aramaic, because that was the language of Babylon.
They translated all into Latin.
So Belshazzar's pride is chapter 5, lion's dens chapter 6. Then he has visions. So we have Daniel's dream, Daniel's second vision, Daniel's prayer, Daniel's third vision. The Bible Project's going to do a better job of explaining all the prophecy in like a succinct way that would take me forever. So we're going to let them do that. So I hope that gave you a little sense of the prophecy. I mean, we could spend... I was thinking about actually next time we do Revelation incorporating Daniel into it, because there are a lot of connections there. But yeah, there are different camps that say, oh yeah, this, like what I described, I think that's the coolest one because it plays out with the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, and the Romans. There's other people that think that is still yet to be fulfilled. I've even heard of weird things like they tried to connect it to World War I and II and the nations rising and America is the stone and stuff like that. There's weird things, but I like the Bible Project's perspective is like, hey, this is a message of hope, that God is in control, and is it a specific, maybe it's yet to be fulfilled for the perfect application of it, but it has been applied as the standing truth that God is in control. I don't know. Maybe that's true too, that it can be applied to multiple different occupations and world powers. Anyway, maybe a lot of it's yet to be fulfilled. Do we see Jesus in this?
Yes.
I think Jesus is the stone. I think that's my favorite interpretation. Jesus is the stone that crushes the statue, that becomes a kingdom that takes over the world. Right, a kingdom that's not a kingdom of man. Right, it's not a new metal of a statue. It's a mountain. It's something totally different. It's for every nation, for every people. I think that takes over, conquers the world. There's a character In chapter 7, that is referred to as the Son of Man, which sounds a lot like Jesus and sounds a lot like the Revelation Son of Man, Jesus. There's also an anointed one in the prophecy in chapter 9. And then there's also a possibility that Daniel predicts the coming of Jesus. So there's this phrase, 77s, in his vision. So it's like 70 is 7 a week, or is it 7 years? What is 77s? But some people have done the math. Bible math is always great. 77s, 70 times 7 years is how many? 490 years. It's about 490 years and Jesus is born. So that kind of fits. That Daniel possibly predicted the time of Jesus' arrival. Yeah.
Except how it's like he was reading the scroll and Jeremiah says there will be an exile for 70 years, and the angel comes and says, actually Jeremiah's prophecy, which he got from God, was wrong. But how would that work?
So you're right. That extends
it was a
his.
result of their sin.
Yeah,
Because
God
they were still
extends
sinful.
their punishment,
No,
their
no,
exile.
Brian. It's 535 years BC. That 490 years. It's when Jesus is crucified, not when he's born.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, that does make
949
sense.
years
So it's roughly So
Roughly.
at the time when the Messiah saves us all, so not his birth, but his death, maybe.
Yeah.
It fits. I mean, that's interesting. You wouldn't. I don't think it was there to be like, there for it to be predicted, but to look back and see it. Key verse, Daniel 1:8. But Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the royal food and wine, and he asked the chief official for permission not to defile himself in this way. That moment of a good decision for Daniel and his friends really set his course on the life that God was going to give him, right? Like if he had just gone along with what his rulers were telling him to do, he would have not written this book. He would have not bitten this guy, I think. Like that, I mean, God was orchestrating all this, right? But that moment of faithfulness set his life on this course to be this prophet, to be this wise man. Otherwise, he would have become a Babylonian, right? But he remained Jewish because of that moment of faithfulness, I think is really important. Yes, Olivia.
Mine has verses 2:22. God reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what lies in the darkness, and light dwells with him.
Yeah, cool. Timeless truth. God is faithful even in the worst of times, right? This is showing God's faithfulness even in the exile. I also have up there, I thought of a lot. God will make a way God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He works in ways we cannot see. He'll make a way for you.
Elaine likes us.
Yes. God can use you in all kinds of places. Daniel could have been like, well, my life's over. I'm in captivity. And really just the overarching, there's a hope here for all nations, for all people, that God's kingdom is greater than all. And I think that's important. Hope that motivates faithfulness. Daniel still had hope even in captivity. That's the book of Daniel. Thanks, everybody.
That's what the book of Daniel